Old ladies walking dogs, couples promenading, war memorials, benches with plaques, young families gathered around the playground, children feeding the ducks, couples lying on the grass, football, tennis, croquet, bowls, 99 flakes. This is the impression you get of Christchurch Park when you walk through it on a summer's day. This is an urban park within the heart of Ipswich, county town of Suffolk. This is where we grew up.
When I was young, the park was an extension of my garden. It was all about secret paths, routes in and out, good places to jump the fence, places to hide, areas for dens, the best conker trees, the best climbing trees. As a teenager, it was about places to drink, to smoke, to snog your girlfriend, how to get in and out at night. Today, I find myself using this space in a very different way. I now walk on paths, enter through gates, look up at the trees, not down from them. I now conform to the conventional Ipswich Borough Council guide to using the park. But my memories of this place from childhood remain vivid. Matt and I discussed this, and we talked about the park and our associated memories, such as the names of specific places, landmarks, the places to go and not to go when you were younger. After further discussion with colleagues, we realised that parks hold a special place in people's memories. More stories were told, so we decided to return to our park and began to think about how we could translate this into a project.
Initially, this project was going to be based on trying to locate the archaeologies of our childhood, understanding why certain places were significant, and how we use this space in a totally different way than we do today. We started to concentrate on children's dens. We thought we could find them. They became our type site for childhood. In turn, we discussed how we might be able to identify them throughout the past, perhaps providing an alternative explanation for some of those strange assemblages commonly labelled ritual. We were also fascinated by how children use the wider landscape, how they approach space in a completely different way. Contemplating our own childhoods, we remembered how everyday objects could be transformed, how fairy liquid bottles became space rockets, how football stickers became a type of currency, or how a stick could become an arrow or a gun.
So with these themes in mind, we began reading about the archaeology of childhood. But this didn't last long, and immediately ceased after our first trip to the park. We were turning into detached onlookers, our memories sacrificed as we attempted to do a generic archaeology of childhood. The project had, after all, started out with us wanting to do something personal. Our landscape, our park. The archaeologists within us had then kicked in, pushing us towards trying to use this project to learn more about the distant past. On realising this, we turned full circle to indulge in our own egotistical self-interest. This wasn't about trying to understand kids in prehistory or what Romano-British teenagers did on a Saturday night. We were interested in the present of contemporary archaeology and to see how our memories fitted into this story.
The initial recce was carried out on a Saturday afternoon. We walked around with a map of the park, plotting evidence of entrances, areas of graffiti, places where teenage kids had obviously gathered. We also explored places from our memory, revisiting areas we held as significant in our past. It was interesting to see that these places we held as important were still significant to young people today. Most of the places the kids hung out were not officially on the map, but they had a longevity of use. There was a whole alternative spatial and temporal geography dislocated from the way the Ipswich Borough Council believed these people should use the park. It was clear from our memories that the park was used in this way 24 hours a day. Just because the gates were shut at 10 p.m. didn't mean the park was closed. A fence could be climbed at any time. Signposts and information boards were replaced by graffiti tags. Backs of buildings became more important than the front. This was in many ways a landscape of rebellion, of nonconformity. We were all rejecting the architecture provided, remodelling it to suit us.
During the whole afternoon, our exploration was punctuated by stories of our teenage years. We talked about where good places could be, where they used to be, which in part provided the structure for our recce. We were enthusiastic. We were almost showing off to each other, testing each other's knowledge. It was almost as if we were taking each other on a guided tour of our teenage years. Out of curiosity, we searched the internet for web pages about the park. We found a site for skateboarders called the Nowhere Guide, and under hookup spots, it was pleasing to find kids discussing these places, this park, this geography in the same way we had 10 years earlier, using the same names as we did for specific places, discussing the same activities. The recce allowed us to identify 2 potential areas for further fieldwork, areas which we hoped could provide the material culture to furnish greater detail and evoke more memories.
We came to the conclusion that the project was about teenagers and our teenage memories. We couldn't find any evidence of dens. Perhaps they were something we wanted to remember, part of an idyllic, middle-class, Swallows and Amazons-esque childhood that we would just not find. Perhaps we were just looking back through rose-tinted spectacles. The material we did find presented us with another opportunity to study the social gatherings of teenagers, engaging in the kinds of activities we knew all too well from our own memories. It also provided a glimpse of a much darker side of the park, something we had no memory of, something we had not expected. The project had gone from a contemporary ethnoarchaeology to a study of how the material culture from the previous Friday or Saturday night reflected or conflicted with our memories.
We were under the impression that gaining permission for this type of study would be easy. Our assumption was wrong. On meeting with the park authorities, we realised how contentious and political a contemporary archaeology could be. As Christchurch Park was in the process of bidding for a large lottery grant to regenerate certain areas and enhance amenities, we were initially greeted with open arms. They perceived archaeology to be adding heritage value to their grant application. However, on hearing our proposals, it became clear to them that we were not doing the type of archaeology they had expected. They thought they'd be getting Time Team, when in fact we appeared to be giving them something more akin to Crime Watch. The project was potentially conflicting with the image of the park they wanted to portray. Realising the delicate position we were in with regards to permission, we had to be careful how we described the true aims of the project. So we talked about mental maps, how the park was special to different people in different ways. We deliberately didn't mention words such as litter, alcohol, vandalism, graffiti, or drugs. However, when they asked if we had got drunk and smoked cannabis in the park at night when we were younger, we realised that they had seen through our pathetic attempts at diplomacy.
One of the clearest concerns expressed during the meetings and throughout later correspondence was the issue of protecting people's privacy. We agreed that no members of the public would be approached during fieldwork and that no photographs of them would be taken. Even though we were studying those all around us, they had become the absent present. As a result, this forced us to draw more upon our own past experiences. It was forcing us to personalise the project further. Several letters were written during the spring, and after a few weeks, permission was granted to carry out a small survey in July. Site 1 is situated within the nature reserve, on the high ground within the central area of the park, 100 metres to the south of the children's play area. The site is within a clearing, surrounded on 3 sides by dense undergrowth, interspersed with mature pine trees. The area is defined by 3 logs, forming an open square of approximately 5 by 5 metres, with the central hearth or bonfire. There are 3 established routes or paths into this space, although none are recorded on the official plans of the park. The site is hidden from any of the routeways, providing privacy, although its elevated situation enables you to see anyone approaching.
Using nails and string, a 1-metre grid was laid out across the site. Lists were made of both the type and quantity of cultural material present within each of the 1-metre squares in order to plot distributions. Categories of material logged included cigarette butts, joints, bongs, beer cans, glass bottles, bottle tops, cigarette papers, sweet wrappers. Where possible, the brand of artefact was noted. This approach was adopted as a fast and quantifiable means of surveying the site, Digital photography was also used to record specific artefacts and areas of graffiti that were prevalent around the site. The survey was carried out at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. This time was chosen for the following reasons. A, to avoid encounters with the general public. B, to avoid encounters with those who use the site. And C, in the hope that artefacts remained and had not been cleared by the park authorities. Outside of the gridded area, a visual survey was carried out to identify further concentrations of artefacts possibly associated with the site.
We'll now just quickly flick through the results. The cigarette plot demonstrates several smokers, third brands, Lambert and Butler, Marlboro Lights, Silk Cut and Mayfair. The distribution could suggest some form of smoker's corner up here, although the results may be complicated by the way people discard their butts. Some drop them, some stub them out, and some flick them.
Alcohol. All the artefacts recorded within the gridded area were small. For example, bottle tops, pieces of broken glass. The distribution appears quite random without specific concentrations. However, investigation of two toss or chuck zones directly to the north and west provide a more complete record of these individuals' drinking preferences and the method of deposition. In general, there's a wide range of beverages, mainly cheap lagers and vodka-based alcopops. Interestingly, a single champagne bottle was identified, perhaps taken from a parental drinks cabinet.
Drugs. The drug-related assemblage included the following: joint butts, bongs, small self-sealing bags, and emptied straight cigarettes. The numbers are low, implying a low level of cannabis use. There does appear to be a concentration of material within the northwest corner of the site. Toker's corner. It's interesting to note the inverse spatial correlation between smokers and tokers. The tokers with apparently the better, more comfortable seating arrangement. The majority of graffiti is also within this corner, much of it territorial in nature, staking claim to certain seats.
Food consisted of sweet wrappers in the main across the whole area, with a possible case of the munchies in Toker's corner.
Sex, not a lot. A single condom wrapper.
The assemblage, in association with the site and the documentary evidence we got from the web, tells us that this is probably the activities of teenagers. They are drinking and smoking, some taking soft drugs. In many ways, the results are unremarkable, and from our memories, quite expected. The bong and the champagne bottle were the highlights of an otherwise mundane assemblage. Although more could be made of these results, what was far more interesting to us was our response to this site and our reflections on the methodology.
Throughout the survey, we experienced a variety of emotional responses. These included excitement and comedy through the recognition of artifacts and activities. It was nice to see they were still drinking the same type of cheap booze we were drinking and smoking the same cheap fags. We felt we immediately understood what was going on. In one respect, this site appeared very archaeological, much like sites we had seen or read about. In addition, we had become the find specialists. We recognised the assemblage and perhaps the significance of some of these activities within their social context. It was almost as if we knew the story we were going to tell as soon as we walked into the clearing. It was just a matter of going through the archaeological motions.
However, we were nervous. We were nervous about being seen by the kids, even though it was far too early in the morning for any of them to be about. The survey had a forensic aspect to it, perhaps blurring the distinction between the archaeologist and the police. We did not touch the material. Instead, we had a tendency to point or flick with artifacts with sticks, maintaining a boundary, a distance from the objects. In effect, this was very un-archaeological. We did not touch anything or collect it, relying entirely on the visual, rather than combining it with the tactile. The problem was, whose archaeology were we dealing with? To be honest, the people we were studying were becoming secondary. Their archaeology was just a mirror for looking back at our own pasts. We were more interested in regaling each other with stories of our own pasts prompted by this material culture. This was not the archaeology of us, although it felt like it. Call it therapy, call it reminiscence, it made us look back at ourselves.
Site 2 was situated directly north of Site 1, 25 metres away across a sunken path on elevated ground within a heavily wooded area. It consisted of a maze of relatively indistinct paths and small clearings, accessible from many points, yet still entirely hidden. We chose this site because after the initial recce, the material on the ground seemed comparable to that from Site 1, but within a different setting. However, during our quick walkthrough the previous week, we had realised that this site told a different story. We didn't know how to approach this survey. It was immediately apparent that there was no sense of a central place. Therefore, our methodology reflected the fact that we couldn't survey it in any conventional archaeological fashion, with our limited equipment of tapes and string. So we decided to use video to record this material within its setting. We followed the path, filming as much of the material on the ground as possible. Far from a systematic gridded survey, this technique was haphazard, much like the archaeology we were trying to record. We will now show you a series of stills taken from this video.
Throughout this survey, we were very nervous. This was not an emotion we had felt before on any archaeological site. This clearly influenced our choice of methodology. We were unwilling to be in this place for too long. The video, again, allowing us to create a barrier between ourselves and the archaeology. This place felt unfamiliar, like someone else's space. We didn't know what we were walking into, who or what could be round the next corner. We were afraid of coming into contact with the subject of our study. We also didn't want to be seen doing this survey and associated with the material culture. The material record that confronted us was much more confusing and disorganised. We understood most of the objects we encountered, but some of the things we found shocked us. The assemblage was similar to that of Site 1, but there were specific artefacts, such as the wallets, the belt, and the pram, that were out of place. Familiar artefacts seemed to us more disturbing than the needle cases or the needle exchange bin. The context of these artefacts, their place within the assemblage, changed our interpretation of the site.
As well as nervousness, there was excitement. We were almost eager to find more conclusive, shocking evidence to confirm our interpretations of the site. More evidence of drugs, more stolen goods. By behaving like this, we neglected the mundane, the everyday litter and material that we had so meticulously studied at Site 1. We realised that this site was probably not frequented by the same teenage kids we had identified within Site 1. This was certainly not one of our places within the park. When we got back home, we started to feel upset. We had gone into an extension of our own backyards, and found something difficult to deal with. Perhaps our memories were tarnished in some way. Everything else we had encountered was about having a good time. Our memories were about having a good time, but this left us feeling sad. We were also worried for the kids sitting 20 metres away at Site 1. We saw them as ourselves. They probably knew about what was going on here, but we didn't when we were in their place. The boundary between our memories, our roles as archaeologists, and the subject of study was blurred. Site 2 remains a problem for us. We are not offering an interpretation of the results at present. With no full understanding or knowledge of the complexity of human issues bound within this archaeology, we do not wish to pass judgment or compartmentalise these activities or behaviour. The only people we are willing to pass judgment on are ourselves.
We've tried to give a very personal account and have been deliberately reflexive. What we haven't actually done is tell you our stories. But throughout the project, we have used the archaeology to re-remember our pasts, bring our memories to the present. But at the same time, these memories remain personal, not to be told to just anyone. This park was full of landmarks in a very personal history. If this project fails in every other way, at least it has brought some past experience, excitement, and emotion to the fore.
Thank you.
Thank you.